20 years. I've sold over $1 billion of real estate, over 1,600 units, and I've done over 400 1031 exchanges, and I've never failed one.
If you're within 3 feet of me, we're probably talking about real estate, much to my family's chagrin. But here's the thing. Most people see 7% rates of freeze. I see opportunity. They're waiting for the perfect deal, and well, I've analyzed thousands of them, and perfect just doesn't exist. So I talk to operators across every asset class, flippers, multifamily syndicators, note investors, and whatever else is working. No sales pitches allowed, just real lessons from people actually doing it. I'm Ed Matthews, and this is Real Estate Underground. Greetings and salutations, Real Estate Undergrounders. It is Ed Matthews with the Real Estate Underground. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is a really exciting opportunity to learn from one of the big ones in this industry, and Dan Ihara from Keller Williams. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really
Thank you
excited to
so
have this
much.
conversation.
Thanks so much for having us, Ed.
Yeah. Dan, for those folks who haven't discovered who you are, why don't you tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into it.
I am a 62-year-old realtor in Honolulu, Hawaii. I have a team, one of the largest teams here in the market space. I'm also a national coach and trainer. I've done this for about 20 years. I've sold over $1 billion of real estate, over 1,600 units, and I've done over 400 1031 exchanges, and I've never failed one.
That's impressive. I think you're being a little humble too, because you also were tapped by Gary Keller to train the top 1% of Keller Williams realtors into helping them become wealth managers, basically, and in implementing the real estate planner program, wealth planners, excuse me. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, and then we can talk about 1031s and Delaware statutory trusts and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. 4 years ago, Gary said that you should probably explain to the world what you do and how you do it. And really, that's what we did. When I started in real estate 20 years ago, I realized in order to be successful, I had to find listings, I had to find business. And then I realized that, and this is 2005, right? I realized that I needed to go to a market that I could solve the biggest problem they had. And so what I found is the biggest problem people with wealth and with real estate have is they're worried about the family dispute after they're gone, if they don't have a plan, and they're worried about taxes. Right? They're worried about capital gain taxes. So that's why I dove into the 1031 exchange and became the expert there. About 4 years ago, we started a community within Keller Williams. There's now 500 of them that we train twice a week in helping families build, protect, and pass on wealth. It falls into a number of pillars. One is senior relocation, because at some point, an older adult, school is not going to work for them. And so we're going to have questions. Where do I go? How much does it cost? What does life look like? How do I get there? And who can help me? So I solved that problem. And remember, in the times of 7, 8, and 9, 2007, 8, and 9, we were in a downturn. For those of you who understood real estate at the time, it was a tough time for many folks. Our business kept growing 20 to 34% every single year. We grew while everyone was getting out of the business. So it was really because we solved the problem. We weren't here selling anything. We were just identifying a problem and then solving it.
So let's talk about that problem. Tell me all about it.
What's going to happen is, should we all be blessed to live long enough, we're going to need some level of care. As long as we can agree to that, then you're going to have to figure out, okay, what does that look like? Now, we all have parents, we all have aunties and uncles. So think about that. Think about when they can't stay home, what happens? They get stuck. They don't know where to go. They don't know they don't even know how much it costs. So I became the expert in that. I studied it, right? And everything that I do is I focus on that solution, and I became the solution. I even started a company called Senior Room Managers in Declutter Hawaii, where I actually went in and physically moved the personal belongings that they didn't want. So we became that solution. We had a property management firm. Why? Because they had investment properties. So we solved all of their problems. And in our earlier days in the early 2000s, that was our main gig. We partnered with retirement communities and they have problems of getting people in, and we became the solution. So I called us. But then, Ed, what happened over time is we asked a simple question, and the question was, do you own more than one property? And we were blown away. Most of them did. Why? Because they built wealth over time and they had investment properties. They didn't call them investment properties. They called them their other property. Because then back in the day, what happened is people would pass away. So I'm talking to a 7 or an 8-year-old, but their parents passed away a number of years ago. They got that one too. They're not doing anything with it. It's just another vacant property that they don't know what to do. So we became that solution. What do you do with your other property? In that process, we realized there's questions we want to ask. Do you need the income from that property to sustain the life you desire? And if the answer was yes, we would go make more money. We'd sell the property, repurpose that asset into an asset that's going to generate more income. Most of them, though, they didn't really want it anymore. They didn't need it. They just didn't want to pay capital gains tax. So that's why we became the expert of the 1031 exchange. We partnered with an attorney. He taught us a vast number of ways you can do this.
So let's talk about the greatest hits, right? There's 1031 exchanges. There is Delaware statutory trusts. There's a stepped up basis upon the owner dying. What are some of the considerations that you go through and take a client through to kind of help them think through what's best for them?
Yeah. And everything we do is really about a question. So the question is, do you need income? If the answer is no, here's our other question is, at the end of the day, when you're gone, who gets what? People don't have a plan. They just think my shit, they're going to spare it. The data said that 70% of families spread over real estate after their parents passed away.
True statement.
That's our mission. Our mission is keep the family together, keep the money in the family, prevent the family dispute and the taxes associated with it. Failure to have proper property decisions around their assets. So let's say they don't need the money, right? And they said they wanted to give it to the kids. Their next question is, if you could bless them today, would you? They all say yeah, but they don't know how to. So we designed this process called a pre-inheritance plan. It's an inheritance plan that you design today while you're alive, and you can even execute today, but the properties don't transfer until demise, so they pass. So you got to step up. But you can do a 1031 exchange. Here's one of the challenges in today's world, Ed, is that back in 1990, 50% of 35-year-olds own their own home. Today, you know what it is?
I bet it's half. 7.
No,
Wow.
only 7%.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because their income didn't rise to the level of inflation of values of real estate. They're not savers, they're spenders. And so they can't buy because they don't have a down payment. So what we're doing is we're helping older adults unlock wealth and reposition it to what matters most to them. So imagine somebody has a $2 million property and they have 2 kids, and the 2 kids don't get along already. So that's going to be a problem they can see. It's a train wreck ready to happen. So what we do is we unlock the wealth, we sell the $2 million property, we buy 2 properties. We let the kids be on the selection committee for the 1031 exchange. Mom and dad still own it. Doesn't transfer yet, right? Stays in their name, tax-free. The kids can even live in it. They could even invest with them. They could buy a $2 million asset, use $1 million as a down payment, and therefore prevent family disputes, prevent painful taxes. This is what we call a pre-inheritance plan. And then upon their demise, we go back to the attorney, we rewrite the trust to indicate this property goes to this person upon my demise, then you don't have a problem.
So educate me on this. And I'm not asking for legal advice, nor are you offering it, right? But the 1031, my understanding, and I've only done 2 in my own career, but those were rental based, right? So that was a little more straightforward. How does a 1031 work if, say, for instance, mom and dad have another property, let's say it's a vacation home, and they want to use the 1031 mechanism that you're describing here? Like, what are the mechanics of that?
Sure. Number one, if it's a vacation home, they cannot have resided in that home for greater than 14 days. Number one. If they did, you're going to get disqualified.
Okay.
It's going to be, but if they have not lived in it or resided in it within 14 days, now it's a true investment property. What they want to make sure they did is they pay the tax on that income. So the IRS, anytime the IRS gets income tax money, what do they think? You got an investment property, right? What else do they think? So now they know they have an investment property. You sell that, do a 1031 exchange, buy another property that you do not live in, and you pay the tax on the income from there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. And so when you're looking at a potential management situation, right, or a planning situation, and you're looking at it from what's the best vehicle, when you look at a 1031 kind of along the lines of what you just described versus a Delaware statutory trust or another vehicle, what are the things that you consider when you're asking these questions? What are some of the things that need to be considered?
So it's really simple. Do you need the income? If it's yes, we're going to go make them more money. If it's no, we're going to bless their family. But here's the other thing is some people say, I don't need the income, but I appreciate it. My next question then is, would you like to be an active investor or passive one? When they're over the age of 60, my age and older, you don't want to be an active investor. You don't need to
50
be.
as well.
You don't
Right.
want to be passive. And that's where the DST shows up, Delaware Statutory Trust. Because in many markets, in our market alone, I can't get them 5%. The DSTs now are producing that. No headaches, no hassles. That's a net number. It just shows, it's like an annuity, right? It just shows up every month. That's what they desire. I would say more than half of our older adults, they go in that direction.
Interesting. And then in terms of the other types of vehicles that you help customers with, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
In our market, you've got long-term rentals and short-term rentals,
Yeah.
right? Short-term rentals, you're going to get about 2 to 3% higher rate of return, right? You can go to other parts of the country. I own a couple of properties in Alabama and in Georgia. I got a bunch of properties. I get 14% there,
Yeah.
right? So you could do that depending on the level of risk tolerance, right? So are you the type of person that is concerned, do you need to drive by and see it all the time? The answer is yes. I'm not going to even offer that Alabama.
Right. Alabama's out of the question.
In my market, right? But if they say, I just want to generate more money, then ask me, you like to consider that. And like they do, we have some people that we partner with all over the country because we sell properties all over the country. And TAP can do that. You can do oil and gas. There's pros and cons with that, right? You can do trailer parks and homes. You could do that as well. Most of our clients are not doing that because they're older. They want simple. They want low risk. They want stable income. And that's why the DST has been our most go-to asset class. The problem with the DST is that when it matures, you got to do another 1031 exchange. That thing's going to mature 3, 5, 7, 10 years. We don't know. We don't even offer the DST when we ask one simple question, do you believe you need to touch the principal in your lifetime? If the answer is yes, I'm not even going to bring up the DST. Why? Because I can't promise they can get access to it. And so they say, I'm never going to need to touch it, but I don't want to do another 1031 exchange. Then we look at the 721 upgrade as that solution.
Okay. So tell me more about that.
So the 721 is the tax code. The REIT is the actual product. But in order to get to that REIT, you can't go directly from a 1031 exchange into that. You have to go to the upgrade process, which is you buy into a DST that is predetermined to be purchased by a REIT at some future point in time. You can't control that. The good process and reason why our clients are doing that is they don't want to do a 1031 exchange again. And once you go from the DST to the REIT, you'll never do one. It stays there until your demise. The other reason why it's good is upon your demise, your kids just send them a death certificate and then you get a stepped up basis. And within 90 days, you get all the money tax free. The other benefit of the upreit is you have access to 40 to 40% of the equity and tax free. So liquidity quickly upon your demise, little bit of access, and you never have to do a 1031 exchange again. That's why we have some clients that are going that path.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. A motivated seller just filled out your web form. If you call back within 5 minutes, you're nearly 4 times more likely to get that seller appointment. But delay your follow-up by even just 10 minutes? Forget it. You're toast. Ella Vista Connect calls that lead back in 60 seconds, qualifies them, and schedules your meeting. Find out how much slow follow-up is costing you. Free calculator at ellavista.com/underground.
Okay. So how do you access that equity? Are you borrowing against the asset, or is there some other way?
Oh, no, you're just selling something and you put all the proceeds in. Most of our clients, they don't have a mortgage.
Okay.
They're older. They've had the property a long time. They're debt free. If they have a mortgage, there are some small percentage of these DSTs that have leveraged DSTs, or non-recourse loans on them. So we do that as well, so that their mortgage completely goes away.
Interesting. And when you look at the various types of ways to help folks, and obviously in our audience, we probably have a wide range of folks who are paying attention here. A lot of them, I suspect, are the kids of these parents, not necessarily the parents. Not a lot of 80-year-olds listen to podcasts, as far as I can tell. Definitely not this one. And so I'm curious about how to educate. Let me give you an example. So when my grandparents were getting up into their late 70s and early 80s, my grandfather pulled me aside and said, okay, hey, now I'm the eldest grandson or grandchild, right? And my mom didn't want to have anything to do with the estate. And so he pulled me aside and he said, hey, when we pass, here's what I want. And I stopped him and I said, look, unless it's in writing, there's nothing I can do to help you. And through a conversation over a cup of coffee, realized they didn't have a will, and they had a house and retirement and all that, and they were still very healthy, both of them. And so I introduced them to an attorney and said, okay, attorney, these are my grandparents, take good care of them. And I got up and walked out and let them have a conversation. And 6, 7, 8 years later, when they passed, is when I reviewed the documents that they'd created. But that story, when I've told that story in the past, I get a lot of people going, yeah, I'm in the exact same situation, right? We have parents or even grandparents who my grandparents were era folks, right? So the way that they passed on assets was they added my mom to their checkbook, which, yeah.
Beneficiary to a bank account. But if you own real estate, and if it's not in a trust, see, the will is not going to help you if you don't have a trust.
Right.
If your assets are not in a trust, it's going to go through probate. What is probate? It's a legal court process. A judge will make a decision. All of your assets become public. It's very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars in many markets in months of time for the person you love the most.
Right.
That's the problem. So we always strongly recommend, after you buy a home, if you're going to get a mortgage, you got to keep it in your name, because the lender won't let you buy it in a trust, anyone's trust. But after you close, transfer that into the trust, because a trust is the only way it'll protect it from probate. The other way you can protect it from probate is a transfer on death deed, a TOD.
Yep.
If you name your asset in the name of a beneficiary, transfer on death, then you're safe as well. But those are the two main ways to prevent probate. If you have some level of wealth, if you only have a $50,000 house, yeah, do a TOD. But if you've got millions of assets and millions of dollars of assets, you're not going to want a TOD. You're going to want to have a formal trust. You're going to want a trust attorney. But you also want to consider, when you start building real wealth, estate taxes. Right? There are federal and state limits to this, that upon those limits, you're paying 40% cap estate tax. Significant.
Yeah.
So many of our clients have significant wealth, and we're talking north of $30 million of wealth. Yeah, you better plan that well, because otherwise your family's not going to see that money. In fact, what happens is going to put a burden to their family, because they're going to require to sell something to pay the tax. but you're not going to have the money to do it.
Yeah. And writing a check to the state or federal government for $12 million hurts a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
All right, Dan, let's get into the final five and let's talk about how your head works. Well, obviously, you've been very successful both in corporate America and here working for the Keller Williams organization. And I suspect that you're not hopping in your car and driving to work every Monday morning because you need the gig, right? You do it for another reason. And I'm curious about that purpose. What gets you out of bed on Monday morning?
Work financially stable. You're right. I don't need to work, but I enjoy it. And I really believe God's put me on this planet to change the lives of those I touch. How do we do that? By preventing that family dispute, keeping their family together. Because when I ask older adults, do you have a plan such that when you're gone, your kids don't fight? Nobody says yes. And so we're on a national mission to change that. We're on a national mission to change that statistic of 70% of families fighting by keeping their wealth in their family and creating a plan such that it's going to accomplish this goal at the end of the day. There's two guarantees that we give folks. And there's the first guarantee is that guarantee there will be a day in time that you and we're going to leave this planet. We're going to die. That's the guarantee. The second guarantee is I guarantee you that that's the date of transfer of wealth when the last person survivor dies. And if that's the case, if it's, you know it's going to happen, what's your plan? So for those of you who are younger, think about your parents, your aunts, and your uncles. What's their plan? If they don't have one, they may want to consider looking into that.
Yeah.
That's why we wrote the book Property Decisions, avoiding family disputes and paying for taxes to create a legacy that lasts.
Yeah, so that's coming out in February. So we're recording this right at the end of January. Can you tell me a little bit about that book?
Yeah, we were really blessed. Gary Keller's been my mentor, and he encouraged me to write the book. And we did. And unfortunately, he wrote the foreword in it. It's a page and a half in our book. He's on our cover. And if we got time, I could read you some of that. But it's so powerful because this guy had the front row seats to 5 decades of this happening. And yet, this is the first time the solution has come out to the world. So he's encouraging people to grab a hold of the book. It's available now in pre-orders through Kindle. It'll launch on February 23rd, 99 cents for an ebook. We're not here to make money on us. We're here to change the world. Make this as easy as possible for people to understand that you can prevent your families from fighting if you make good property decisions.
Excellent. All right. And so you mentioned Gary has been one of your mentors. I'm curious about, and it doesn't necessarily have to be from Gary, but I'm curious about the best advice you ever got and who did give it to you.
I think, and it sounds simple, but the best advice is stop being the judge of life. Come from curiosity over judgment.
Yep.
See, we all become a judge of something, and it could be from not only your client, but it could be from a sibling, it could be from your parent, it could be from a spouse. We become a judge of what we see.
Sure.
We don't really know what's behind that. And so over the last 10 years or so, my life in my mind and how I show up is quite different. I ask a lot of questions because I'm curious. I cannot be the judge. And when I ask questions, I learn something. And I help people self-discover what they want, not what I want to tell them they want, but what they truly want. And you know what? Here's the funny thing, Ed. Most people don't know. So I keep digging until they do know. And they appreciate that.
I learned something from one of my mentors, actually, asking the 7 whys, right? And are you familiar with the exercise?
Yeah.
So basically you ask a basic question, why do you want to retire? And they'll answer the question. And then you ask, based on their answer, why is that? Why do you want that? And you go down to the 7th why. And by the 7th why, that is the core typically of 6, 7, 8. That's the core of what's really driving them, right? That's what we're trying to get at. That's the juice, so they say. And couldn't agree more. I tell my kids every day, everybody's dealing with something, right?
Yeah. So my methodology is a little different, similar, really different, but because I take the word why out. Why makes people defensive?
Yeah. How comes?
What is the forward asking question, right? So what's causing you to do this? And there's always a cause. So words matter, right? What's causing you to do this? They're open to tell you. But if you ask your kid, why did you do that? I didn't do that. Right? What's causing you is I had a reason of doing this. You never asked me the right question. And so that's why my model is what's causing you.
I like that. I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Well, obviously, you've been doing this for quite some time and you're not perfect. No one is. I'm curious about a decision that, as you look back on your business career, you look back on the decisions that you've made. I have a list as long as my leg of decisions I would love to have back. And I'm curious about a decision that you made along the way that, knowing what you know now, you look back and go, man, I'd love to have that one back.
I've been really blessed. A lot of things that work for me in my life, I'm more cautious than not. But I think the biggest problem, and it goes back to the same thing we talked about earlier, is I made the judge of people and I was wrong, right? My judgment was wrong because I didn't ask the right question. It's almost like I didn't care, but I did. I just didn't know how to ask it. And as I started learning I always ask myself this question, what's the question I didn't ask that I should have? And when I started doing that, I realized, wow, I can ask myself better questions. That means that if I can ask myself better questions, that means I can ask other humans better questions.
Yeah, that is profound advice. That's wonderful. So I'm curious how you take in information, and obviously you're someone who continues to learn. So what's the book on your nightstand? Who are you paying attention to these days?
There's a number of folks that I'd say Gary's one of them, obviously, because he's written a number of books.
Sure.
John Maxwell, I'm a fan of, and Noel Robbins. I listen to a lot of podcasts because I have an infrared sauna that I sit in every day for 20 minutes, so I can listen to podcasts. I listen to yours, and that's kind of how I take it in. I do read not as often as I want to, but I read because I travel a lot and I'm on an airplane a lot. I'm in the most remote place on the planet. So I have at least 5 hours.
Yeah.
So I do read on the airplane.
Excellent. And okay. And then I'm curious about how you define success in your own life.
To me, it's pretty simple. Success is I get to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, with whom I want to do it with. I feel like I've arrived there because I last year we cut down. 2 years ago, I was traveling 167 days. This last year, I traveled only 112 days. Because I've been around the planet 45 times. And a lot of that's for fun. I surf in Mexico 3 times a year. I snowboard in Japan once a year. And I'm traveling and teaching all over the country. And so, yeah, I have, in my world, a dream life. I've got a beautiful home. I've got a wellness center in my backyard where I have a swimming pool, jacuzzi, infrared sauna, and a cold plunge.
Wonderful. Sounds nice.
The other way I define it is I watch every sunrise and sunset till I die and surf every day till I can't.
That's great. So Dan, when you're not talking about real estate, I have a feeling I know how you're going to answer this, but when you're not talking about real estate, what else do you like to do for fun?
I'm a water guy. I live on an island. I feel like my body needs salt water every day and my body needs to see the sun every day. So again, I have a simple life. I work from maybe 8 to 4 or 5, and I'll watch the sunrise and the sunset. It's 5 minutes from my house, and it just brings me peace.
Wonderful. And so, Dan, if someone wants to learn more about you or your business, what's the best way to do that?
You can look me up. You just put Dan Ihara anywhere. You'll find me. Google me. There will be a site coming up now. It'll be called danihara.com, where you'll have access to free training for consumers and certified training for professionals and access to buy the books.
Wonderful. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Ed. I appreciate it.
This has been the Real Estate Underground. Don't forget to subscribe. It helps us grow. Until next time, Undergrounders, remember your real estate journey begins with a simple step forward. Now get to it. Bye for now.